In this episode, we get down and dirty with 5 ultimate rust buckets restored to sweet perfection. We got classics saved from the scrap heap.
It was naive of me to jump in because it was a very big restoration.
It was in the riots, and it was in pretty poor condition when Saddam Hussein was overthrown.
Rides saved from disaster.
It took less than a minute to swallow 8 vehicles.
And even models that saved the manufacturer's future.
It really came at the right time for BMW.
It's the original hot hatch.
One thing you can always be sure of with restorations, there's always a story to tell. Our first ride, it was once lying 35 feet deep with no hope of survival.
It took less than a minute to swallow 8 vehicles.
A one-of-a-kind original with a miraculous recovery.
It was actually restored by General Motors due to its historic significance in the Corvette story.
This 1 millionth Corvette is the sinkhole survivor.
In nearly 30 years, only 1 million Corvettes were built. If we look back at a vehicle like the Ford Model T, in 20 years, they built over 15 million Model T Fords. That really speaks to the quality that Chevrolet puts behind the Corvette.
Rolling off the production line in 1992, this flag-waving American beauty is the 1 millionth Corvette. It was a proud milestone for Chevrolet, with every employee at the plant signing it on the production line. The white Corvette convertible with the red interior proudly toured the USA promoting the model's 40th anniversary. But on the 12th of February, 2014, at 5:39 a.m., this classic Corvette's dreams came crashing down.
911, what is your emergency?
The floor has collapsed in the back area. It's in the sky dome. It's just full of smoke.
A sinkhole swallowed 8 Corvettes. Unfortunately, 5 of those Corvettes were damaged beyond repair. However, 3 of them were able to be restored. The Blue Devil ZR1, a 1962 Tuxedo Black Corvette, and the 1 millionth Corvette you see behind me. The sinkhole was nearly 40 feet wide and over 30 feet deep. It really happened due to the fact that we live in what is known as a karst region here in Kentucky. And that means that there are caves running underneath ground pretty much everywhere. It's very common, actually, to have sinkholes in this part of Kentucky. Fortunately, the 1 millionth Corvette was fairly near the top of the pile, and the crane was actually able to grab it from the rear suspension.
Saved from that sinkhole, GM pledged to restore the Corvette, and 30 skilled saviors went to work on the car.
Fortunately, the Corvette was not damaged so badly that it couldn't be restored, actually using a majority of its original components. It was unveiled here at the museum on September 3rd, 2015, in front of a large crowd. When the cover was pulled off, the one signature that had been lost on the car due to damage to that part, the person who signed it was actually here at the museum and signed the car during the unveiling.
This crazy Corvette has been through it all, but now she's back to new, and wow, she is beautiful.
The Corvette is pretty much a base model convertible 1992 Corvette. It has an LT1 engine, It is an automatic transmission, and really the only thing that distinguishes this car is the decal on the windshield, the two headrests that are stitched with 1/1,000th Corvette, and of course all of the signatures hidden underneath the body panels of this car.
If they can survive a sinkhole, in the Count's eyes, it's definitely an ultimate ride.
The three that are restored really speak to the resilience and strength of not only the Corvette brand, but also the Corvette community at large that love and appreciate this car and what it means as America's sports car.
From a ride that needed rescuing to one that did the rescuing. The BMWs are a German giant that'll go down in history for awesome car design. Sleek saloons, super speed, and impressive appearances. But one of their rides didn't quite fall in line.
So your 0 to 60 speed is forever. There's not a lot of accessories or features.
But man, this was the car that saved BMW from its deathbed and gave it a new lease on life. The 1957 BMW Isetta. At the end of World War II, Germany was devastated. Citizens were short on bucks, and the BMW had some big problems.
There was not much of a market for their bigger cars and their sports cars that they had been making previous to the war, so they needed a small car. They bought a design from an Italian refrigerator manufacturer that had made a car that basically looks the same as the Isetta.
They added an extra wheel, put in a new engine, and this baby was in the shop window.
It was quite a success.
162,000 Isettas were produced, and BMW pulled through.
It really came at the right time for both BMW and post-war Germany.
Jim has always loved quirky cars, so when he got his hands on an Isetta to restore in 2006, it seemed like the perfect project. The car was a barn find and only set him back $1,700. But when he started taking it apart in his basement, it turned out that his Isetta was more rust than ride.
The good news was all the glass was intact. Yes, there was rust. Yes, there was body damage, but everything was there. I bought a new floor for it. I took it to a welder. He said, you don't have enough metal in the side panels for me to weld the floor to the body. So I actually had to go out and find a new body. Fortunately, I found a guy that had 3 of them to make one, and he had an extra body, and so I bought a second body.
Blood, sweat, and dollars were poured into every stage of the rebuild.
I worked on it for a number of years, probably 6 or 7, before it was ready to go back together. And at that point, I realized I didn't know how to put it back together because I hadn't taken enough pictures.
Oh, Jim, I know some guys you could have called.
So I sent it down to a guy in Georgia, and he undid all the things I had done wrong and finished it up. First thing you may have noticed when I opened the door, the steering wheel actually retracts with the door. There's 3 pedals here: accelerator, brake, and clutch. This is the handbrake. Then the shifter's on the side panel there, so it's really a thinking man's car. You've got to remember that you got to shift with your left hand. The shifting pattern is also upside down and backwards.
Whoa, man, you gotta have your head on straight to drive this baby.
Now to open the sunroof or the escape hatch, there's a simple lever on the inside, and you just open it up. Use a special little key for the engine compartment. It is a 4-stroke engine, so you don't have to mix gas and oil like you do with some of the other microcars out there. Going around again, we've got the luggage rack where we keep our basket on there with our tools. These are the Nerf bars on the car. You can see there's a regular bumper on the front. I don't know what they're gonna really protect you from. There's no fuel gauge, so I have run out of gas because you think at 60 miles a gallon you can drive forever. So I've got a little stick. That's the gas gauge. It drives like any other car, just a lot slower. Top speed is around 55.
No chance of a ticket there, bro.
People are always waving. They're taking pictures of you. One of the things you can say about the Isetta is that you get more smiles to the mile.
That is awesome.
One of the reasons I got the car was because it was different and unique. And I enjoy going to shows. There'll be Ferraris and Lamborghinis and high-end Porsches. And all the people that are not the car people will always be attracted to this car. That's what makes it an ultimate ride for me.
From a small but sweet Isetta to a countryside burning Camaro.
It's very loud, very fast, powerful and mean.
When you think of American classic muscle cars, you don't usually imagine them burning up the English countryside.
Who doesn't want a raw 60s classic muscle car?
But that's where you'll find Kieran Piper's labor of love.
This is my 1969 Chevrolet Camaro.
Since he was a kid, Kieran loved watching cars burn it up on the big screen. But as soon as he got his license, he had to get his hands on something with star quality.
That led me to buy the 1969 Camaro the day before my 18th birthday. It was a bit of a spur-of-the-moment thing.
The car was a full-on wreck. This baby needed a lot of work.
And it was very naive of me to jump in because it was a very big restoration.
Despite having zero experience on restoring a car, Kieran was able to use his training as an aviation engineer to get his Camaro flying again. It took him 3.5 years and 28,000 bucks, but now he's got a car that could easily star in its own movie.
The car arrived pretty much as a birdcage. The gearbox was actually given to me in a very oil-soaked cardboard box. There was no glass in it, the engine was out and just on a pallet. It was my first ever engine rebuild, so I decided, well, just jump right in. I took everything back down to the bare block and slowly rebuilt it up, and it turns out the engine was in pretty good condition.
In my opinion, a ride like this should be kept old school, and my man Kieran was definitely thinking the same way.
One of the main things I wanted to keep was the original dash, along with the steering wheel as well. This thing here was with the car from factory. It's got all the original speedometer and AC gauges. And the seats, I completely ripped them down to a bare metal frame, welded up what was needed. I then put the foam in and the fabric over the top and used the original hog ring to really tie it in together as it was from factory.
When it came to the bodywork, this ain't no single-man job. Kieran pulled in some favors and left the paintwork in mint condition. Kieran burnt this baby with his bare, oily hands, but he had one more change in his search for perfection.
This car originally ran a 396 6.5-litre big block V8 with a 4-speed manual Muncie transmission. However, last winter, I decided to engine swap this to a more modern engine. This is the LM7 5.3-litre. It's got a Holley Sniper EFI throttle body matched with the Terminator X ECU. Custom valve covers. I've got my brake booster and master cylinder here, which is mated with a Hurst shifter line lock, which locks up the front wheels, which helps me do a few burnouts.
And with a setup like this under the hood, this baby performs.
The fastest I've been in this car is about 150 miles an hour. It definitely has a lot more room to go faster. It is a pleasure to drive.
Man, this must turn some heads.
The general public love it. Reaction is always great to see. All those hours and time and money spent is definitely worth it. This car is very special to me purely because I saw it at its worst. Then to carry it out 3.5 years, it really made me realise that anything is doable and anyone can do this.
This next car is not only an iconic British ride, but it started a complete European car revolution.
It's the original hot hatch. Light, nimble, fun.
The original sporty 3-door pocket rocket that became a fan favorite.
This is my Mk1 Golf. When I was a kid, my dad had one of these. The Mk1 Golf has always been the car that I wanted. And when I turned 17, that was the car that I went out to buy. I really wanted something that brings back memories, I guess.
The Mk1 Golf, or some of us Americans may be familiar with, the Rabbit, first made it to U.S. soil in 1974. With sales of their iconic Beetle plummeting, Volkswagen needed a new model to move ahead. Sales skyrocketed, and people fell in love with a new type of affordable sports car that inspired a decade of design. But how did Chris's car start its journey?
It ended up being this giant project that I never really expected it to be. It took 17 years plus from when I first started taking bits and pieces to where we are now. Life got in the way, college, university, I moved away, got a family, and it never really intended to do like a full restoration.
Chris put the work in to restore this beauty, but it wouldn't have been possible without his buddy Dave.
I helped him basically from the ground up, do all the metal work, the paint work, the body work, and then just gave him advice back and forth on the restoration process. I knew he'd do it because he had the drive to finish it, which is one of the most important things. When you're building it, you need to have a clear vision.
I only expected to do the rear arch and another sill, but as we started getting into the build and started taking bits and pieces off it, we realised that there was a few more bits of rust on the corner there, so there was like rear panel, rear quarter, rear tub.
I was there every step of the way, sanding, spraying, and polishing and everything.
After over a decade of precision restoration, this baby will soon be able to hit the road. But for now, it's sitting in mint condition.
Original grille, original trim, badge, aftermarket trims, which have been chopped a little bit to fit the BBS E50s. Original Hella rear lights, and a Super Sprint exhaust. We've got the seats are out of a Porsche 911. The dashboard is from a 79 GTI. The steering wheel is a Motney with a Spring Alex Boss, and it just feels lovely to drive. This early Mk1 Golf door card, Audi levers, Toyota MR2 handles, and the rest is pretty much original. The engine itself should be around about 180, 200 brake at the fly.
Chris bought this gorgeous Golf for $2,000 back in the day, with it now valued at over $42,000. Man, that's some serious profit. But there's no chance of Chris cashing in.
It's irreplaceable. I couldn't sell it. It's a car to enjoy, and I'm sure my son will enjoy it when he's older.
And when it finally hits the road, Chris is hoping it'll be quick.
I think we're looking for around about 180, 200, anything above that, and I'll be happy.
With the resto almost complete, my man Chris can't wait to hit the gas.
We've just replaced the engine in it, so we're now rewiring the loom and putting in the new injection system, and then I can take it on the road. I'm looking forward to driving this car. It's been a long time coming. It'll be sweet to drive.
From a Mk1 masterpiece to a speed star owned by a dictator. Our final ride is a slice of British history.
It's exclusive, it's comfortable, it's safe, it's reliable, and it's fast. What else would you want a car to do?
An English classic you wouldn't expect to pop up in a war zone.
It was in the riots, and it was in pretty poor condition.
And definitely not the kind of ride admired by a deadly owner. This is Saddam Hussein's Continental S1. This beautiful Bentley was born in 1956, destined for Crown Prince Abdullah of Iraq.
It was a very expensive car. This is the only left-hand drive that was ever delivered to royalty.
2 years later, Prince Abdullah was killed, and the car was banished to storage for over a decade.
And then it was sold to a private citizen who made a movie about the prince with the car in it.
Saddam watched the movie and impounded the beautiful Bentley for himself. But once overthrown, the car was caught up in conflict and seized by Allied forces.
The legitimate owner of the car went to the United States Army with his title, and he said, I'd like to have my car back, or what's left of it, and he got it.
Back on the move, the ride was sold to a collector in Canada.
The first I heard of it was when they contacted us to ask us if we had seats, because the seats had been stolen in the riots.
Richard was the right man to go to. Not only does he love the Bentley Continental S1, this dude's been selling and restoring Bentleys for over 45 years. Realizing that his restoration was going to cost big bucks, the Canadian owner decided to sell it, and Richard arranged for one of his pals to buy the car. And the 13-month restoration project began.
We do everything in-house here, body off, frame up restoration, and it's stripped down to the bare chassis, and everything is restored, the engine, every mechanical part to original or better condition. Every nut, every bolt. That's what the client wanted. It was a very ambitious restoration. You wanted as close to perfection as possible.
This car deserves the best, and it got the best.
This is the tachometer. There's the oil pressure gauge, water temperature, fuel. This is pretty cool. Rolls-Royce offered something called a Continental Touring Kit, a nice-looking wooden box with spare parts in it so that when you were touring on the continent, you could fix the car on the spot.
Richard has done an incredible job on this banished Bentley. He must be proud.
It's very gratifying to me to bring a car back to that condition. And I think they deserve to be restored. I don't think they deserve to be destroyed.
Amen to that, brother. 5 incredible tales of rust to riches. You know, a car might look beyond saving, but man, if you got a vision, anything is possible. We'll see you next time on Ultimate Rides.